Jiang Hua, an engineering otaku, returns to the past with a big surprise. And my body is so good that it tastes delicious. I didn't expect to have a wild and unrestrained younger brother named Zhong Yuemin. I can't waste this time as a freshman. Let's just take a break, and when the wind blows, I can change the world. I have a god's perspective, I come, I see, I conquer. Keywords of the novel. The Years of Red Flag Exhibition without pop-ups, The Years of Red Flag Exhibition full collection download, the latest chapter reading of The Years of Red Flag Exhibition. Chapter 1. New Arrival. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. New Arrival, the east is red, the sun is rising, and a flower is growing. Jiang Hua woke up from his sleep and still felt a bit uncomfortable. He had been in this passionate era for 5 days. In his past life, he was a person who slept until he woke up naturally. Now, he was awakened early in the morning by the courtyard broadcast, which is really uncomfortable. However, he dare not complain about anything. Since receiving the information in his mind, he has known to speak with caution, otherwise he may easily suffer from reckless consequences. The information in his mind made him understand what his current situation was. He was born in the 1950s, and his father entered the public security front after the Korean War. However, he bravely sacrificed himself in the operation of catching spies, and his mother, like his father, was also a public security officer. He was heroic in the operation. There is a saying from the beginning. When his parents offered sacrifices to the heavens, his power was boundless. When he became an orphan, he was only 9 years old. Fortunately, his parents had many comrades in arms, and he was adopted by his father's comrades in arms. When Jiang Hua found out who his adoptive father was, he became confused. Zhong Yuemin, the name he remembers, is the name of the father of a male protagonist in a story from the 1960s and 1970s. He also remembered the cheap younger brother, who was indeed named Zhong Yuemin. I have entered a parallel world myself. Jiang Hua has read this story more than 10 times. He used to envy Zhong Yuemin's attitude towards life, but as he matures, he feels that Zhong Yuemin has some difficulties in taking on important responsibilities, mainly due to his free and unrestrained hippie lifestyle, which is too obscure and does not conform to national conditions and traditions. My adoptive father is very confident and has no worries about the future. He is truly a steadfast proletarian warrior, and his faithful faith has earned Jiang Hua sincere admiration. Slowly getting up, putting on a grass-green sanitary gown, and putting on a khaki coat, it's actually the kind of military uniform that has been washed many times. This is the most popular style nowadays, and the older it gets, the more qualifications it shows. I put on a good show at my doorstep and practiced the techniques of free combat for a while, which I learned in my previous life at the university by participating in the student union. Nowadays, these children in the courtyard like to arrange fights with people. Although most of the children in the courtyard cannot fight each other, they cannot resist the presence of stubborn masters. The relationship between veterans and stubborn masters is inherently incompatible, and they often have to take out kitchen knives. Having good skills is stronger than anything else. Having traveled through the past 5 days, Jiang Hua also knew some of the variations in his body. Firstly, his hearing and vision were clear, and his strength and spirit were much stronger. What excited him the most was the storage space, which was not too large, about the size of a basketball court, but still a static space. However, this is already enough, at least spending these 10 years without any problems. What he needs to do now is to dig deep, accumulate grain widely, and hide in the dead. Looking at Zhong Yuemin's room, the quilt was thrown on the bed, as if it was no different from yesterday. I don't know where he went this day, but now that his foster father is not around, he is like a wild horse without a reins, enjoying himself everywhere. Jiang Hua took out a small box from the depths of the wardrobe, which contained a passbook left by his parents. It was less than 6,000 yuan, which included both his parents' savings and compensation, as well as 110 yuan change and some receipts. After obtaining some non-staple food tickets, Jiang Hua came to the supply and marketing cooperative and prepared some fish and meat. Today, he can visit his adoptive father. He must not be able to eat well at home, so he needs some meat to supplement his elderly family. I bought a fish and a pound of meat, which can be cooked and put into a lunchbox. Some people ask how to cook, which is nonsense. Since the 21st century, there were a few men who couldn't cook, especially during the epidemic. It's an exaggeration to say they couldn't cook and starve to death, but it's a truth that even eating instant noodles can make you sick. During lunch, Zhong Yuemin wobbled back home with Xing Tong and Yuan Jun, and each of them had a net bag with changed clothes inside. They were also preparing to visit their father. "Brother, have you prepared Dad's clothes?" Zhong Yuemin is 4 months younger than Jiang Hua. Since he came to the Zhong family, this kid has been calling Jiang Hua brother. Jiang Hua was carrying a net bag, which contained clothes for washing, a lunchbox, a front door, and a bottle of ergotu. "Ready, have you guys eaten yet?" "Yes, old Madame Zheng Tong made wawatu and millet porridge." Yuan Jun followed suit and said, "The old Zheng family is very stingy. There aren't even a few big pickled carrots." Zheng Tong retorted, "We find our family stingy. If you have the ability, don't eat it." Oh my goodness, one person made 4 corn flour buns, and even the landlord's family can't afford them. Come on, stop making trouble. They are all going to see their father. There is a way to talk about them. Do you know if they will report their bad news when they see their father? Let them be happy when they see their son. They will eat at my place in the evening. I made braised pork belly with brown sauce, and there are still half of them left. Although they can't enjoy it, they can also coax their mouths. The 3 of them agreed in unison, "Got it, Brother Hua/Brother Hua." 4 people were carrying their net bags, while Jiang Hua walked straight ahead with a straight back. The 3 of them were loose and didn't look like good people at first glance. Looking back, Jiang Hua thought to himself to reform the rogue habits of these 3 guys. Although they were not considered bad kids, their first impression was not a good thing. In the office of the director of the Revolutionary Committee, Director Wang checked each package one by one. "Jiang Hua and Yuemin, this wine cannot be brought in, it violates discipline." Jiang Hua accompanied his smiling face and said, "Director Wang, please raise your hand. The old man's body is not well boned, and there is a bit of coldness inside. This wine makes him feel very tired and weak. My father has also been a revolutionary soldier for a lifetime, and he still has a sense of self-awareness. He will drink a little tonight and will not cause you any trouble. Po Zi, you are a good child who knows how to show filial piety to the elderly. Your father and I also know that you won't cause trouble, but if this wine bottle is broken, it will be glass shards. This thing can kill people." Zhong Yuemin was no longer willing, and Director Wang's words were equivalent to saying that his father was a coward who only knew how to escape. Just as he was about to stand up, he was glared at by Jiang Hua and sat still unwilling. Jiang Hua smiled and said, "Director Wang, sometimes when we come to visit, you have full control over the whole process. What my father said is to believe in the party and the people. Such a positive and optimistic revolutionary spirit, how could it be short-lived? You can rest assured that it won't happen." Director Wang thought about it and thought it was right, so he nodded and said, "All right, I'll make an exception for you. It's mainly because you're a good child, and you should also advise your father. P.S. Many people say that I am not greedy enough to swallow elephants, and the space on the football field is still too small. In response to public opinion, I changed it to a basketball court." End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Visiting Dad. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Visiting Dad. After successfully passing Director Wang's hurdle, the next step is to find each father. Jiang Hua and Zhong Yuemin arrived at Zhong Shanyue's isolation room, which was a huge room with a bed, a table, a chair, a thermos, and a spittoon. The most abundant materials were written in large characters, and Zhong Yuemin sat at the table, writing vigorously. Dad. Asterisk 2 Zhong Yuemin looked up and saw Jiang Hua and Zhong Yuemin, with a smile on his face. Huazi and Yuemin, here you are, come and sit down. Move the chair to the bed, Jiang Hua and Zhong Yuemin sit on the bed, and Zhong Yuemin sits on the chair. You've been doing pretty well outside lately, haven't you caused any trouble? Zhong Yuemin answered first, no, what kind of trouble can we children cause? Zhong Yuemin didn't save face for her son and said seriously, I'm not worried about Huazi. He has been mature and steady since childhood, and you often make me worry. Zhong Yuemin looked at Jiang Hua and said, Huazi, you're a few months older than him. When I'm not around, discipline him well. My elder brother is like a father. If you make a mistake, just educate him, and it's okay to use a belt. Jiang Hua smiled and said, Dad, you need to have confidence in yourself. The children you educate still have a bottom line, they won't go any worse. At most, they can fight outside or something. With such a big child, it's not a big deal to get into a mischievous fight. With so many of you fighting, this is also a manifestation of your bloodline. Zhong Yuemin sighed and said, yes, it is because of this heroic spirit that we, the people who grow flowers, were able to defeat the Japanese and defeat KMT. Jiang Hua smiled and asked, all right, don't talk about us anymore. Let's talk about yourself. How have your body and bones been lately? Laozi's body and bones are very good, with blood and fire rolling over. Are you still afraid of this small difficulty? You don't have to worry about me. This is an internal conflict among the people, not a big problem. That's right, my dad is a hero. There shouldn't be any problems, it's all those petty people who are causing trouble. Shut up. Jiang Hua and Zhong Yuemin shouted in unison, and Zhong Yuemin didn't forget to look back at the window. Zhong Yuemin scolded in his eyes, if you don't think it over, what should and shouldn't be said? Don't you have any knowledge in your heart? Besides, what kind of place is this? How could you talk nonsense? Okay Dad, Yuemin is young and energetic, and it's understandable. This situation is actually normal, but it's actually abnormal for someone like me. Sometimes you become too mature, not like a child of 15 or 16 years old. Although Zhong Yuemin was preaching to Jiang Hua, his face was full of indulgence and appeared quite kind. Jiang Hua opened his lunchbox and said, Dad, I made braised pork belly and fish in brown sauce today. Please help yourself. No need, you are developing, so you should eat more nutritious food. I can't be hungry or tired here, I've eaten enough. I also brought you a big front door and a bottle of ergotu. This ticket is a bit difficult to obtain, so I finally managed to find someone to save it. You can just make do with it. Zhong Yuemin's eyes were a bit moist. Both children were good children, and he was blessed with Zhong Yuemin. The father and son chatted for a while when someone knocked on the door and said, Zhong Yuemin, it's time to visit. Let your son come out. Jiang Hua and Zhong Yuemin helped Zhong Yuemin up, and Jiang Hua said, Dad, then we'll leave first and visit you again next time. Go ahead, remember, you must believe in the party and the people. Tomorrow will surely be beautiful, and the motherland will be strong. You must contribute your own strength to the prosperity of the country. After coming out, Director Wang checked the net bags they brought out as usual and found nothing wrong, so he let them go back. Zheng Tong and Yuan Jun had already been waiting at the door. Yuan Jun cursed and said, Damn it, this person surnamed Wang is really nothing. Even after an hour of visitation, he had to leave in 45 minutes, but you two stayed for almost an hour and a half. Zheng Tong also said angrily, I can't be as ruthless as the director, and I can't be as ruthless as anyone else. Tomorrow, I'll go with their third son. Alright, I don't want your dad to be upset inside, so just be calm. I've been visiting for so long, isn't it just because I said a few more nice words without getting angry? Zheng Tong patted his chest and said, Brother Hua, don't worry, I've tricked Wang Laosan. He doesn't know who put it on. Jiang Hua rolled his eyes and didn't believe a word of Zheng Tong's promise. Yuan Jun believed that he pointed at Zheng Tong and said, I believe you can handle this kind of immoral thing. Jiang Hua warned the two of them, you're the third in their family to be Director Wang. Since we had this courtyard, he has lived there and watched us grow up. No one can do anything, he has a clear family background. Zheng Tong said skeptically, can't we? As the three of them walked, Jiang Hua said, don't be dissatisfied with 7 or 8 of them. Director Wang is a good person. It's been over a year now, and you've seen how bad human nature is. There are many people who step on their own mother and son to rise to power. Director Wang has not been able to hit our father in the well enough. In such a big environment, he can still act like a praying mantis. Zhong Yuemin nodded and said a fair word, that's right. We've played tricks on third brother a lot. Apart from suing our parents, Director Wang has never used any means against us. 4 people stumbled back to Zhong Yuemin's house, watching as the sky turned dark. Jiang Hua heated up the leftover lunch. Half a pound of meat, half a fish, for young men of all sizes, were at the age of the poor old man, and in the blink of an eye, they were swept away. Zheng Tong touched his stomach and said regretfully, it's not satisfying. If I get rich one day, I will eat braised pork belly until I'm full. Jiang Hua brewed jasmine flowers and watched the 3 people lying on the sofa smile. Yuan Jun said to Jiang Hua, Brother Hua, you hide at home every day and don't go out with us to play. It's not boring. Come out with us for a stroll tomorrow and introduce you to some old soldiers. You also pat your mother.in.law, so you don't have to be so boring. You look like an old lady. Okay, I can also experience your veteran's way of life. Zhong Yuemin stood up and grabbed Jiang Hua, looking left and right as if he didn't recognize him. What are you looking at? Zhong Yuemin asked, are you my brother? In the past, when we were together, you said we wasted our lives, but now why are you willing to do so? I suddenly realized that in life, one must go through everything and keep walking the same path, which may be too monotonous. Zhong Yuemin slapped and said, hey, I just said, people need to live a colorful life. Jiang Hua looked at the pitch black outside and said to Zheng Tong and Yuan Jun, let's stay here tonight, just like you guys. If you go out for a night walk, you'll definitely be caught by the police as hooligans. Make do for the night. Half an hour later, Jiang Hua was filled with immense regret. The 4 big men lived together in a house that was not yet soundproof, and snoring kept coming and going. If I had known earlier, it would have been better to let Yuan Jun and Zheng Tong enter the bureau. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Pai Po Zi. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Pai Po Zi. Jiang Hua sat on a tree stump, legs crossed, looking at 6 or 7 people in front of him with helpless eyes. Led by Zhong Yuemin, next to them were the second generals of Hum Ha, Yuan Jun and Zheng Tong. The 3 of them were lying on a small soil slope, with a few attendants behind them throwing dirt and debris into the distance. Zhong Yuemin shouted at Yuan Jun, Comrade Deputy Company Commander, the enemy has fierce firepower. Comrades must persevere. Difficulties are like springs. If you are weak, it will be strong. You must maintain a high fighting spirit. Yuan Jun stood at attention and cursed, yes, no, how did I become a deputy company commander? Why am I the deputy, you are the chief, and what position is Zheng Tong? Zheng Tong is the instructor. Zheng Tong stood at attention and shouted, report Comrade Company Commander, there is a soldier over there who has a negative fighting spirit and sits watching the excitement. Should we put him in confinement? Everyone turned to look at Jiang Hua, and Zhong Yuemin shook his head and walked over, saying, brother, what are you doing out here? You're sitting here sunbathing. Join the battle sequence quickly. Jiang Hua squinted her eyes and asked helplessly, this is your daily entertainment? I haven't played such a childish game since I was 9 years old. How old is it? Zhong Yuemin seemed to be naturally convinced by Jiang Hua. He had no way of refuting Jiang Hua's words, even if he could speak fluently in his daily life, he was now at a loss for words. Zheng Tong was very witty and pulled Yuemin away, saying, Comrade Company Commander, the situation ahead is tight at this moment. You cannot leave the commander's position without authorization. Zhong Yuemin descended the donkey and returned to Xiaoda Slope, but when he raised his telescope, he saw a dazzling red color. The small minions next to him are still fighting hard, and Zhong Yuemin has already wandered beyond the sky with his soul. This girl is really handsome. Zhong Yuemin unconsciously showed a bad smile. Watching Zhong Yuemin observe the enemy situation, he smiled. With so much YD, Yuan Jun and Zheng Tong thought something unexpected must have happened. Yuan Jun snatched the telescope and looked in the direction that Zhong Yuemin was looking at. Sure enough, he also saw the red scarf. Your grandfather, we're at war. What did you do, play? At this moment, the red scarf was approaching, and even though Zheng Tong was highly myopic, he could still see someone. He shook his head and said, no, 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 my appetite is also good. The words of my ancestors will not be wrong. The platoon leader is going to pursue his own happiness. Yuan Jun didn't mind the commotion and said, go ahead, Yuemin. This doesn't look like your style. You can take action right away, but you're afraid that some people will pout back when they take action, and you'll lose face. Zhong Yuemin said, unwilling to be outdone, don't provoke me yet. I bet I can definitely get that girl. Hanging a telescope on his chest, Zhong Yuemin took a 2-step walk and started chatting up, why are you here? It's been a long time since I saw you, cousin. Red Weibo politely said, you got the wrong person, I'm not your cousin. Zhong Yuemin said shamelessly, it's impossible, you're my cousin Wang Xiaohong. I'm not Wang Xiaohong, my name is Zhou Xiaobai. When Zhong Yuemin approached people, Zhou Xiaobai was innocent, and Luo Yunlin didn't realize that Zhong Yuemin was just a little jerk. Zheng Tong and Yuan Jun were originally planning to come up and speak up, but Jiang Hua stopped them. The fact proved that they were sometimes teammates of pigs. Without the interference of Zheng Tong and Yuan Jun, Zhong Yuemin smoothly chatted with the two girls for a long time, even inquiring about their school and courtyard. After watching the two girls walk away, Zhong Yuemin walked back happily and said excitedly, how about it? It's just because my buddies made such a move, and that's what happened. Jiang Hua shook his head and said, if I hadn't held down these troublemakers, you would have had them pout back long ago. You're still feeling proud. That's right, brother tiger fighting, father and son soldiers on the battlefield. We are good brothers. Jiang Hua is not willing to waste his life with the gang anymore. He wants to think more long-term. He now has a space to use and needs to accumulate more food. Otherwise, if he cuts in the queue in the future, he will have to starve to death. Seeing that Jiang Hua was about to leave, Zhong Yuemin felt embarrassed to pull him aside. What's going on? Zhong Yuemin stuttered and said, brother, what's going on? We haven't had any food for dinner yet. You've spent all your living expenses again. Zhong Yuemin nodded awkwardly. He was probably a member of the modern Moonlight tribe. The government provided a monthly living allowance of 15 yuan, which would last for about 20 days. He would spend all his money here and there. Jiang Hua's situation is much better. He is an orphan of a martyr, with a monthly living allowance of over 20 yuan for the country. During holidays and festivals, his parents and close comrades in arms will also give some money and various receipts. This is also why he can buy erguoto and dakiamen. Will the country issue tobacco and alcohol tickets to these underage children? He took out 2 yuan, along with about 10 pounds of capital grain vouchers, and handed them to Zhong Yuemin. He also reminded him, don't keep going to Xingtong's house to make ends meet. His father has also come down, and it's not easy for orphans and widows. They only have a small amount of food in a month. Unfortunately, he caught up with you, a group of poor old men who are only half grown. If you really don't have to eat, you can go home and eat. There's a brother with you who can take a bite. Yesterday when I was eating meat, the big guy was like a whirlwind, which made Jiang Hua Meng have the idea of making meat. Quantitative meat is difficult to buy, and it can't withstand the fact that there are many wild animals and they are not protected yet. Jiang Hua just wants to try some wild game. In his past life, Jiang Hua studied mechanical design. Although he was not outstanding, drawing a blueprint was not a problem. He went home to write and draw a design for a crossbow, with a lever and a center, and steel wire strings. Ordinary people may not be able to create it, but Jiang Hua has many uncles and uncles distributed in various departments in the capital. It should not be a problem to come and ask for help. Jiang Hua walked out of the door carrying the blueprint, pedaled his bicycle, and arrived at the Red Star steel rolling plant. Upon arriving at the factory gate, Jiang Hua noticed something that seemed to have been seen in some TV drama. After half a day of recollection, I decided not to think about it and went to the reception room at the entrance. The strong young man guarding the door drives people away as soon as he sees Jiang Hua. Go ahead, this is a key unit at the ministerial level that you can easily enter, not a place for you to play. At this time, the security department was quite impressive, equipped with guns and capable of arresting people, equivalent to an internal police station within the enterprise. Jiang Hua said politely, "Big brother, I'm looking for my uncle Han Jin." Han Jin, Chief Han, are you his nephew? Yeah. The young man looked around for a moment and then said, "First, stand outside the door and wait a moment. I'll make a phone call to ask for your advice." Watching this guy vigorously shake the phone, then say something on his lips, then put down the phone and ask out the window, "Kid, what's your name?" End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Siheyuan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Siheyuan, Jiang Hua. The young man picked up the phone again and shouted, "Section Chief, I've asked clearly. His name is Jiang Hua." "What? Oh, let someone bring it over for you, okay. The young man put down the phone and said to the other guard, "Sanner, please watch first and I will bring the person over to the department head." Following the strong young man towards the factory, this guy still wants to have a conversation with Jiang Hua. Jiang Hua is not dumbfounded, just talking nonsense without a word. "Chief, someone has brought you here," the strong young man shouted as he stood at the door and knocked. "Come on in." Opening the door, the strong young man led Jiang Hua into the office. Han Jin was holding a newspaper and working hard to study the highest instructions when he saw Jiang Hua laughing. "Huazi, why did you think of finding Uncle Han today?" Han Jin put down the newspaper and said to the young man leading the way, "This is the child of my old leader. You go back to your post, and I will personally register later." The system of ministerial level units is strict, and Han Jin relies on his identity to have someone bring Jiang Hua in, but he still needs to register clearly later. This is an organizational process and cannot be careless. "Okay, Chief, you're busy. I'll go back to my position first." After the door closed, Han Jin gestured for Jiang Hua to sit on the sofa and turned around to pour Jiang Hua a glass of water. "Is there anything wrong? Is there not enough living expenses?" As he spoke, Han Jin was about to go and grab his pocket. Jiang Hua put down the enamel teapot and stopped Han Jin. "No, it's enough for living expenses. Last month, Uncle Ma gave me 30 yuan and 30 kilograms of food vouchers. It's not even acceptable if I don't accept them. Hi, as you know, Ma Ju is used to it. If you want to take it, you must take it. If you don't want to take it, if you dare to take it, you can take it. He has a lifelong friendship with your father." Han Jin sat back at his desk, opened the drawer, looked around, and took out some receipts, saying, "Since the Horse Bureau has given you money and food vouchers, I will give you some food vouchers, as well as tobacco and alcohol vouchers. You have grown up, and you can stick to tobacco and alcohol, but you need to be restrained." Jiang Hua wanted to refuse, but Han Jin glared and said, "Well, if you have a high position and weight in the horse racing department, you can accept it. You can't accept what I, as a small department head, give you. It's up to you to judge." Jiang Hua had no choice but to take the bill and smile, saying, "It's impossible. Uncle and uncle care for me, but I don't need so much either. Take it, be prepared, and tell me what's going on when I come to see my uncle today. If I can, I'll do it on the spot. If I can't, I'll try my best to do it." Jiang Hua took out the blueprint and laid it on the coffee table. "Uncle, I designed a crossbow myself and thought of shooting some wild chickens and rabbits to give a tooth-beating ceremony. Aren't you a steel mill? Let's see if you can help me make it." Han Jin took a look at the blueprint and smiled, saying, "I can't tell. The kid has a hand. This thing is no different from a gun, and there is also a stock. But whether it can be made or not, Uncle doesn't know. I'll take you to the workshop fitter to ask." Along the way, people kept greeting Han Jin and looking at Jiang Hua with curiosity. However, Han Jin's authority was displayed there, and no one dared to ask. Entering the workshop, Han Jin asked an old fitter, "Master Yi, take a look, can you make this thing?" Jiang Hua understood what was going on at the steel rolling mill when he saw this fitter. "Isn't this the Red Star steel rolling mill in the courtyard?" The Master Yi in front of him was the one who was despised by thousands of people at the starting point, the pull-off frame and the black-bellied Yi Zhonghai. Yi Zhonghai held the blueprint and didn't look at the data for a moment. Instead, he praised, "Chief Han, you still have this skill. This blueprint is so professional at first glance. It wouldn't take more than 10 years to draw such a neat blueprint. I don't have this ability. I'm good at carrying guns, but I'm not good at making guns. This was painted by my nephew." Yi Zhonghai looked at Jiang Hua, who was currently observing the machine tools. The old products had RB characters on the nameplate, which were left by the Japanese. Jiang Hua had never seen such outdated products when he was in school. Yi Zhonghai complimented, "This child is stable at first glance, and with this skill, he can be trained in the workshop for 2 years. He is definitely a good material for a technician. No way, I'm just in my early 16 years old and I'm not prepared to let him enter the factory. In a year or 2, I'll send him to the army. Both of his parents are martyrs, so I'll put him in the army and forge him well. Martyrs, glory." Jiang Hua pouted and said, "I dare not say it's glorious. I'll be loyal to the country and die for what I deserve." Jiang Hua actually has very little impression of his parents. He lost his parents at the age of 9, and coupled with Jiang Hua's struggles in the 21st century, his impression of his parents has become even more blurred. And there is also a certain emphasis on what is said in the speech. At this time, it is important to carry the highest instructions when speaking. Jiang Hua's quote from the article, "Serving the People," is also the highest instruction. Han Jinru patted Jiang Hua's head with empathy, but did not speak. Yi Zhonghai carefully reviewed the drawings and said, "No problem, this thing is not complicated. It can be fixed in half a day, and the factory is not too busy right now. I will prepare it for you before I finish work." Han Jin was very happy and said, "I would like to thank Master Yi. You need to spend dim sum and be honest. How much is the material? Just report it to me." Jiang Hua also said on the side, "Thank you, Mr. Yi." Yi Zhonghai waved his hand indifferently and said, "Don't be polite. As for the matter of carrying your hand, please be busy first. I'll prepare the materials now." Han Jin led Jiang Hua out, and Jiang Hua said, "Uncle, why don't you be busy? I'll leave first, and I'll come over to pick it up before I finish work this afternoon." "What are you leaving for? It's almost 11 o'clock and it's time for lunch. Come to uncle's place, can I let you leave empty stomach? If this gets out, I won't let your uncles laugh at you. Without hesitation, Han Jin walked towards the back of Jiang Hua and entered the cafeteria. He shouted, "Pillar, stupid pillar. Shout, isn't this Chief Han? It's not even time for dinner yet, why did you come to the cafeteria early? You're out of touch with the masses." A plump woman in her 20s and 30s joked, but Han Jin didn't take it seriously either. Who is detached from the masses? Who doesn't know that I, Han Jin, have always been working in getting along with the masses? Today, my nephew came to see me. You asked silly Zhu to make 2 hard dishes, and I treated my nephew well. He poked his head out of the kitchen exit and jokingly said, "That's right. Who wouldn't know that Chief Han likes to get along with the people the most? Last time the workers in Workshop 6 caused trouble, Chief Han got into a big fight. Han Jin pretended to be angry and said, "Don't use me to play cymbals, silly pillar. You're the only one who lacks my strength to suppress me. Hurry up and cook some hard dishes, and come back and settle the bill with me." Silly Zhu withdrew his head and responded loudly, "Chief Han, just take a look. Today, I will use my skills to ensure that your nephew can swallow his tongue deliciously. For those who read books, please choose to bookmark them. If you're more generous, give me a recommended ticket." End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Advance a small goal. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Advance a small goal. In the TV series, Silly Zhu always said that he is a descendant of 3 generations of imperial chefs. Jiang Hua ate the food he cooked and felt that it was just that. Perhaps it was related to the lack of raw materials, and the taste could only be considered average. In the current era of lacking oil and water, heavy oil and salt are indeed very popular. Han Jin eats very well and keeps asking Jiang Hua to eat more. Silly Zhu casually walked into the private room while wiping his hands with his apron. "How's it going, kid?" "It's delicious. I've never had such a delicious dish before, have I?" Jiang Hua nodded and responded, "You are indeed a master, your craftsmanship is extraordinary." Jiang Hua's praise made Silly Zhu's old face bloom with a chrysanthemum. Why did Jiang Hua say that? It was mainly because he felt a bit paranoid when watching TV. If he said that the dishes he cooked were average, he probably would be a bit annoyed today. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Jiang Hua arrived at the Red Star steel rolling plant on time. Han Jin sat in the reception room early and waited. When he saw Jiang Hua coming, he took out a large burlap bag from under the table. "The things are ready, and Master Yi is very attentive. He has specially made a few extra small parts for you as backup." Jiang Hua smiled happily and said, "Thank you very much to Master Yi. Huazi, to be honest with me, you haven't had any conflicts with anyone else, have you?" Jiang Hua shook his head and Han Jin cautioned anxiously, "You can use this thing, but you must be careful when using it. I tried it and it's like playing with someone within 50 meters. Don't shoot anyone at it." "Uncle, don't worry, at most you can shoot a wild rabbit, a wild chicken, or a roe deer. I won't provoke any more aggressive ones." "That's good, you've always been steady and said you want to do it." Han Jin took out another item from under the table and handed it to Jiang Hua, saying, "This was captured by me during the war on the peninsula. I'll give it to you for self-defense, don't take it for a fight." Surprisingly, it was a Gurkha sword. Jiang Hua thanked Han Jin and returned home satisfied with carrying a burlap bag. He opened the burlap bag and found parts from all over the place. Han Jin just said he had tried it, which was to try the crossbow string. Install the crossbow with a screwdriver and place the arrows into the arrow box. Yi Zhonghai made 40 crossbows and 5 arrow boxes, and Jiang Hua installed the arrow boxes. With one pull of the bow string, it automatically bounced. With just one press of the trigger, the crossbow arrow flew out quickly and was nailed to the door panel, penetrating 2 inches deep. Not to mention the power of a rabbit, even a wild boar could easily collapse with caution. Fold the crossbow arms and use a set of covers to hide them from anyone. With the crossbow and arrow, Jiang Hua was not in a hurry to hunt. As the saying goes, there is no diamond, no porcelain work. If Jiang Hua is certain that he does not have shooting skills, he must practice. Of course, Jiang Hua still couldn't bear to use those 40 iron arrows to practice. Good steel needs to be used on the blade. At that time, the country emphasized supporting facilities. A large factory may have many supporting parts factories, so there were many wooden factories in the 4 or 9 cities. I found a carpentry factory, and Jiang Hua spent 1 yuan to find a carpenter. Master, take a look. How much does it cost to help me get 200 wooden arrows like this? The carpenter looked left and right, measured with a ruler, and said disdainfully, this leftover material is enough. Give me 1 yuan, and in 3 days, I will make 300 arrows for you. Do you have any harder wood? I hope it won't break easily when shot out. The master said disdainfully, this is easy. We have iron wood, yellow pear, and purple sandalwood here, all of which are good woods. Jiang Hua's eyes lit up. He didn't know if Tai Li Mu was famous or not, but Huanghua pear and purple sandalwood would definitely be valuable but not marketable in the future. Master, do you sell good wood here? Sell it, what do you want to sell? Jiang Hua waved his hand repeatedly and said, if you don't buy anything, you just need to buy some good wood. The carpenter pointed at Jiang Hua and said with a smile, chicken thief, I think good wood is hard to find. Prepare it first, and it will be useful for making furniture in the future, right? This master is really a clever ghost, pretending to be clever, but how could he know that these woods will be sold for sky-high prices in future generations? Jiang Hua quickly nodded and said, that's what it means. Is it difficult to find good things? I'm afraid if I miss them, it will be difficult to find them later. The carpenter looked around and whispered, it's easy to say. The leader of our revolutionary committee doesn't know much about the industry. If you're willing to spend some money and have some intention, you can buy any kind of wood. If you have any further intention, I'll give you a good price. Understood. Jiang Hua spent 50 yuan and gave the leader of the revolutionary committee a thumbs up. The leader of the revolutionary committee then made an order for Jiang Hua to choose any wood he wanted. Then he gave the master some meaning again, and the carpenter took Jiang Hua into the warehouse and introduced him to him as if he were familiar with it. When it comes to our warehouse, whether there are many good things or not, there are many few good things. Take a look here. There are 5 or 6 directions of golden silk nan, as well as 5 directions of purple sandalwood, legitimate small leaf sandalwood, and fewer yellow flower pears. Only 4 directions are available, and there is also the gloomy wood of golden silk nan. It's a coincidence that there are 8 directions. Jiang Hua waved his hand and said grandly, I'll take all of what you said. The carpenter scratched his finger and calculated, saying, kid, this is not cheap. Even if I give you a good price, you'll still get 500 yuan. Jiang Hua said nonchalantly, 500 is 500. Once the matter is settled, I will give you 2 bottles of Red Star Ergotu. Beautiful, let's go open the order and pay now. Jiang Hua is very satisfied. With the over 500 yuan he has spent now, in a few decades, he will still have to exceed 100 million yuan. This is equivalent to achieving a small goal 40 years ahead of schedule. Jiang Hua hired more than 10 board masters to work hard for 2 whole days before finally moving these woods clean. Don't be fooled by the fact that they are hardwood, at least 1 ton per square meter. The dozen board masters were also exhausted, but Jiang Hua did not mistreat them and gave them generous rewards. Zhong Yuemin and his team usually have some empty houses as bases, and when they have free time, they just hang around and play cards. Jiang Hua chose one of them as the address to receive the wood. When Banerjee finished unloading all the wood, Jiang Hua quietly turned around and unconsciously collected the wood into the space, which was about half the size of a container. The savings have shrunk a lot, but Jiang Hua doesn't feel sorry, let alone he has a way to make money. Leaving this space unused is simply a waste. Zhong Yuemin didn't go home for another 2 or 3 days, and I don't know who he followed. This is a common phenomenon among children in large courtyards nowadays. Many of them have their parents dismounted and their children are herding sheep, wandering around in groups of 3 or 5. However, thanks to years of good education, there is still a bottom line in their work, and few people will go to harm the heavens and reason. Retrieve the wooden arrows from the carpenter master. This time, the master made a lot of money. He was happy to make some more for Jiang Hua, which was 500 pieces. Anyway, he didn't need to spend money on the scraps, just some manual labor. I hope everyone can speak up and give me some tips. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Autumn Hunting. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Autumn Hunting. Jiang Hua wakes up early every day to exercise, using a crossbow to find a free place to practice shooting. He finds that with his current strength, it is not easy to shoot accurately. The fixed target arrow hits the red heart, making him a little proud. Moving targets is not easy to practice, mainly because it is difficult to achieve rapid movement of the target, but it cannot defeat Jiang Hua. There are Beihai, Shikahai, Hohai, Shihai, and Zhonghai in the capital city. Of course, the last one cannot enter. There are many fish in these large lakes, and there is no danger in shooting fish. It is not a big deal to lose a wooden arrow. By tying a wooden arrow with a thin rope, standing by the water, or rowing a boat, Jiang Hua can make rapid progress in shooting fish. Finally, they can eat some meat and fish. The grilled fish is not delicious without oil, but Jiang Hua is not short of oil. His fuel tickets are quite a lot, and he can also buy oil in Pigeon Market. He suspected that Zhong Yuemin had a dog nose. Since he shot a fish, Zhong Yuemin suddenly went home to eat, and even Yuan Jun and Jing Tong came to eat. The food consumption at home is very fast, and these 3 people don't know what noodles are. They don't care about their faces until they can eat enough. Time flies quite quickly, it's already late autumn in the blink of an eye. Now is the time for autumn hunting, and Jiang Hua thinks it's time to go hunting on the mountains outside the city. His bow and arrow skills are already proficient, and he has also developed a small skill. Flying knives, within 10 meters, he can hit wherever he points, without any false attacks. Having prepared his dry rations, Jiang Hua took the bus with a thick cotton coat and arrived at Mentugu. Although many trees in Mentugu were cut down by nearby people during the steel refining process, they are still lush and there should be a lot of wild game. Plunging into the mountains of Mentugu, Jiang Hua still had some confidence in finding prey. In his past life, he had been fascinated by documentaries and videos about wilderness survival. He had studied them carefully and learned a lot of theories, and finally came into use. Hunting, Jiang Hua is not sure about anything else, but he knows that patience is necessary. He has watched this movie before and knows how Vasily became an excellent sniper. Jiang Hua was ambushed by a pond, lying on a tree branch, breathing carefully, waiting for the prey to appear. A rabbit bounced and came to the pond, not too big. In Jiang Hua's eyes, it was only 3 or 4 pounds of meat. Holding his breath, he aimed the crossbow at the rabbit, who was still restless and still looking around. After a while, the rabbit may not have felt any danger, so it poked its head into the pond to drink water. Speaking quickly, Jiang Hua pulled the trigger and the crossbow arrow flew out steadily, directly hitting the rabbit's small head. Jiang Hua observed on the branches of the tree for a while before slipping out and weighing the rabbit in his hand. It weighed about 4 or 5 pounds, which was equivalent to 3 pounds of meat. Use a shovel to shovel away the bloody soil, and Jiang Hua will return by the original way, saving up for the future. On this day, Jiang Hua gained a lot, including 4 rabbits, 3 pheasants, and 1 roe deer. Leaning against the branches of a tree, wrapped in a thick military coat, Jiang Hua slept all night. In the morning, except for the soreness all over his body, he had no other ailments. I hastily nibbled on a few steamed buns, which gave me this advantage in terms of space. When I put the hot steamed buns in, it still feels hot when I take them out. Jiang Hua changed his hunting location. The pond was too small, and there were not many large prey to appear. He worked hard all day, weighing less than 100 pounds of meat. What he needed now was more and better. Jiang Hua cautiously rubbed forward in the forest, and no one knew if there was any danger in taking a step forward. Suddenly, Jiang Hua took out a flying knife from his belt, and with a flick of his right hand, a white light flashed, and a wild chicken was nailed to the ground. Unexpectedly harvested, pulled out the flying knife and happily threw the wild chicken into the space. Turning around the foot of a mountain, a small stream flowed happily ahead. Jiang Hua found many messy footprints in the open space next to the stream, and there were many wild animals here. However, there was no suitable shelter around. Jiang Hua took out a shovel, picked a suitable location, dug a one-person deep hole, cut some branches and trunks, and built a shelter above the hole. Jiang Hua found some plants with strong odors to hide on his body, concealing his scent, and then shrunk in the pit, waiting for the prey to come knocking. 2 large red deer, each weighing at least 300 pounds, are worth 100 pounds of meat. Seeing the red deer, Jiang Hua, who had been lacking in oil and water for a long time, felt his saliva secretion accelerate. Taking advantage of the moment when the big red deer lowered its head to drink water, Jiang Hua pulled the trigger, regardless of whether it had hit or not, and forcefully pulled the lever. The crossbow arrow was wound again, aiming at the red deer beside him and shot out. Shuang Shuang hit, both arrows inserted into his head, but Jiang Hua was still winding. In 5 seconds, 3 arrows fiercely penetrated into the stomach of the red deer. Large animals are not so easy to die, even if all 4 arrows hit the key. The big red deer still ran about 20 meters before falling to the ground with a loud bang. Jiang Hua cleverly observed the surroundings and confirmed that there was no danger before crawling out of the cover. He quickly ran over and collected the deer into the space, then swept away the traces and crawled back into the cover. After calming down his excitement, this red deer is at least 6 months old, and of course, he dares not eat meat every day. In this situation, eating meat every day is considered decadent. Humph. Jiang Hua wakes up from the stupor. A huge wild boar comes to the water. Jiang Hua dare not move at once. The wild boar in the forest is even more ferocious than tigers and bears. We must be careful. It may become its dim sum. Jiang Hua hesitated to shoot for a long time because he knew that wild boars would rub against trees all year round and then play in the mud. Resin and mud would form thick armor outside the body, making it almost impossible for a gun to penetrate. The crossbow in his hand might not be useful. Jiang Hua knew that he didn't have many opportunities, and he probably only had to shoot his eyes and ears apart from the explosive chrysanthemum. He really didn't have a chance to win. Jiang Hua held his breath and looked east and west at the wild boar, as if he had discovered something. Suddenly, the wild boar took a step and walked towards Jiang Hua's cover. Did it find itself? The more he faced this critical moment, the more Jiang Hua reminded himself not to be in a hurry. Watching the wild boar getting closer and closer, although it was extremely dangerous, there were also benefits. At least Jiang Hua's confidence was greater. Watching the wild boar within reach, the martial arts world calmly pulled the trigger, and a cold arrow shot straight into the boar's left eye, leaving only one arrow tail outside. The wild boar suddenly went crazy, and Jiang Hua moved the lever. The second arrow was strung, and Jiang Hua shot it decisively. However, the wild boar was in a state of chaos, and the arrow only slipped past its ear. It was also this arrow that made the wild boar discover Jiang Hua's hiding place, and the wild boar with only one eye rushed straight towards him. Jiang Hua was trembling with fear, and his rudimentary cover could not withstand the impact of wild small tanks. Unexpected joy, signed the contract, sprinkled flowers to celebrate, and added another chapter today. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. The Role of Hormones. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 7. The Role of Hormones. Jiang Hua rushed out of the cover in 3 steps and 2 steps, and he had a back move. The reason why he set the cover here is naturally due to a way out. Grasping the crossbow and arrow tightly, Jiang Hua ran out without looking back. There was a large stone that was 1.5 tall, and Jiang Hua had tried to climb it. As for the wild boar, he could only sigh at the stone. The wild boar was blind in one eye, and when it ran, it was already crooked and twisted. However, it gave Jiang Hua some breathing time, and in less than a few breaths, it arrived at the foot of the boulder. Putting away the crossbow and arrow, Jiang Hua climbed up hand and foot, and the wild boar followed closely behind. With one less eye, the wild boar felt a bit dazed. Perhaps I didn't see the boulder, but I hit it head-on. However, due to running awkwardly, the impact force was not very fatal. By the way, the wild boar also bumped into some stars in its eyes. Jiang Hua had not yet climbed to the top, but he definitely wanted to seize such a good opportunity and jump down immediately. In mid-air, Kulka's army knife was held in his hand, using the falling force and Jiang Hua's immense strength. With a snap, a sharp military knife pierced into the neck of the wild boar, directly cutting in half. Even the wild boar spirit couldn't bear such a blow. The wild boar could only pounce in place, knock Jiang Hua out, and then fall to the ground with a loud bang. Jiang Hua lay on the ground. It's not necessarily that a traveler would have a chest full of thunder and a face as flat as a lake. In that scene just now, Jiang Hua didn't believe anyone was not afraid, unless it was a fantasy descending on the urban plain. At the critical moment, fortunately Jiang Hua's legs and feet were fine and he crawled out of the cover in time. Otherwise, if he didn't hit it straight, he would have scattered the cover and couldn't bear the supporting wood. After all, he was just a little stronger, not invincible from knives and fire. Jiang Hua took a deep breath for a while, and the first thing he did when he regained his senses was to pack the wild boar into the space. This place couldn't stay anymore. The wild boar had just shed too much blood, which could easily attract carnivorous animals to appear. I estimated that the meat I have beaten in the past few days will weigh 700 to 800 pounds, enough to eat well for a long time. It's time to go home. Carrying a crossbow, walking cautiously towards the outside, being careful is always safe. On the way, I picked up another red deer and a roe deer, and also used flying knives to deal with 3 wild chickens. It also weighed several hundred pounds of meat, so there was no shortage of oil and water now. After leaving the mountain, Jiang Hua found himself lost. Fortunately, there was a village not far away. He politely inquired about the road and then walked 6 miles to reach the main road where cars were coming and going. The cars here don't come and go with 4-wheeled cars, there are also many cars, not too few. Jiang Hua stopped a large truck and politely asked, "Big brother, where are you going? Are you going to the city? If it's on the way, give me a ride." This child is foolish, right? This is the north of the city. I'm heading north to Inner Mongolia, and the next stop is Zhangjiago. Jiang Hua quickly apologized and offered the driver a cigarette. "Sorry, I'm confused. I'll go to the opposite side to stop the car." It was easy to stop a donkey cart, but the villager took him to the town, got on the bus, and wandered for several hours before returning home. After hastily eating a few steamed buns in the space, Jiang Hua lay unconscious in bed and fell asleep. The next day, I woke up and glanced at Zhong Yuemin's room as usual. The blankets were neatly stacked, but I still made them myself. It seemed like I hadn't gone home for several days. After eating a bowl of wonton on the street, Jiang Hua sighed that it was better to be in the city. The mountains are deserted and there is no smoke. Returning home, soak a pot of jasmine flowers and open a book. This book is not commonly seen outside. The militia training manual is still one of Zhong Yuemin's collections, claiming to be one of the magical tools of time travel. In a blink of an eye, a day passed, and as the sun set towards the west, Jiang Hua boiled hot water and took out a wild chicken to begin shedding its feathers. After working hard for a long time, I finally finished cooking. The flames greedily licked the bottom of the pot, and a refreshing aroma dissipated. Coming early is not as good as coming. Look, as soon as I get home, my brother has everything ready. Still outside the yard, Zhong Yuemin stood out. Zheng Tong's poor-mouthed voice also sounded. That's right, our brother loves us the most. We know you were injured today, so we specially stewed chicken to make up for it for you. The courtyard door was pushed open, and Zhong Yuemin took the lead. However, at this moment, he appeared very embarrassed, with his head wrapped in gauze several times. Jiang Hua didn't lift his head and said, I've been arguing with people again. Today, I ran into a master. Even Zhong Yuemin, who claims to be invincible in the capital, can still win the lottery. Yeah, today I was ambushed by a grandson. It was mainly because Zheng Tong almost wanted him to guard behind me. When the grandson slapped the board, air was not in his position and someone gave him flowers. Jiang Hua jokingly asked, that expert has done such a delightful thing. It's worth celebrating. I have to treat him to a big drink. Yuan Jun smiled and said, Brother, do you still remember the red scarf that Yuemin slapped on his wife back then? Remember, isn't it Zhou Xiaobai? She called me. Zheng Tong and Yuan Jun were amused and burst into laughter. Zheng Tong couldn't help but say, this sentence is even more cola than being beaten by the Yu people. Today, we met Zhou Xiaobai again. Yuemin was getting tired of people. There was a grandson named Zhang Haiyang who shared a large courtyard with Zhou Xiaobai. Without saying a word, he came up to find fault. He choked and started fighting, and Yuemin was killed. Jiang Hua glanced at Zhong Yuemin and smiled, saying, You didn't deserve it. You touched the dishes in someone else's pot. That's right. Zheng Tong danced and said, We're just being wronged. You, Zhong Yuemin, at least slapped your mother. In law. We didn't do anything and just got into a fight. My arm was bruised by the chain, so who should I talk to? Who mediated for you? Li Yuanchao is still at the police station. Yuan Jun stood up and walked around for 2 rounds, wondering, did you see what was going on? If you hit the back, the police station will come, and our brothers will run away. Is it worth seeing? Zhong Yuemin has suffered such a big loss. If we hadn't fought back, would he still be Zhong Yuemin? Someone must have stopped him, otherwise he wouldn't have been injured so lightly. Only Li Yuanchao is the police station that can make Zhong Yuemin care less. Zheng Tong gave a thumbs up and said, Holy Ming. Jiang Hua asked, How is Zhou Xiaobai? Didn't she explain? Yuan Jun smiled and said, I explained. Who cares what she says when it comes to fighting? Later on, she became impatient and probably frightened by the barbaric behavior of the Yu people. Zhou Xiaobai ran away with Luo Yun. Jiang Hua sighed and said, Damn hormones, they make people's blood boil. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Taobao. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Taobao. Zhong Yuemin's dissatisfaction became a laughing stock in everyone's mouths, and he threatened, You all owe me smoking, right? Why do you keep saying what I'm doing? Zheng Tong walked up behind Jiang Hua and said, Come on, please start your performance. Hua Gu is here now, growing up in order, starting from Hua Gu. Jiang Hua glanced up at Zhong Yuemin, who immediately felt a chill all over. Perhaps Jiang Hua had killed someone, and Zhong Yuemin felt a murderous aura. Brother, why are you willing to buy a chicken to stew today? That's all. Jiang Hua lifted the lid of the pot and picked up a spoon to taste the salty taste. The taste was good and just right on the palate. Damn it, I'll be out for a few days, and you'll just be wandering outside for a few days. This is the wild chicken I went into the mountains to hunt. You're really a dog, you know you'll go home when you smell it. After finally stewing a chicken, I have to share it with you bastards. I'm sorry for myself. So what a coincidence. Zhong Yuemin reached out and tasted the soup as if scooping it up with a spoon. Jiang Hua patted his hand and said angrily, the staple food at home is not enough. Go out and buy some mantou. Can you feed you just by drinking chicken soup? Hey. Zhong Yuemin stood up, squatted down again, and said awkwardly, brother, running errands is not a problem. That money and food tickets, can you support me? Take it from the drawer yourself, and you'll become an old master every day. After taking the money and tickets, Zhong Yuemin went out to buy mantou. Yuan Jun and Zheng Tong helped Jiang Hua wash and make some food. When Zhong Yuemin came back, the soup was almost ready, and the four of them had a meal at sea. Yuan Jun rubbed his stomach and said, the meat is still delicious. It's been so many days, and every day the pickled vegetables and bumps make me feel uneasy. Today, I finally have meat. For young men and women, a large pot of chicken soup with no leftover soup, chewed up all the residue and bones. Yuan Jun and Zheng Tong took the opportunity to stay overnight, but were immediately kicked out of the house by Jiang Hua without hesitation. They wanted to stay overnight, but Grandma, she didn't sleep well that night last time and had a headache the next day. The next morning, when Zhong Yuemin woke up, he was gone again. I didn't know where this kid had such great energy all day long. He had nothing to do all day and woke up so early. It was simply not enough hunger. Jiang Hua spent the whole day squatting at home yesterday, and today he is still contemplating, preparing to take a stroll on the street. I only realized on the street that there aren't many people on the street nowadays, and the most common ones are actually veterans. These big boys have been free from constraints since the school closed down, and they have become the focus of attention in the public security center by constantly recruiting cats and teasing dogs on the street. Jiang Hua was dressed in a navy blue Zhongshan suit. Although he had turned a bit white, he straightened his waist and back as he walked, looking like a promising young man. Therefore, the comrades at the police station only took a few glances and no longer paid attention. There are occasional fights and brawls on the street, and comrades from the police station can quickly rush to the scene on bicycles. However, these veteran soldiers have rich combat experience and immediately disperse like birds and beasts. No matter how fast the police station arrives, it can only be said that they are in high demand. Jiang Hua strolled freely and unconsciously walked to a waste procurement station. Looking at the sign of the waste recycling station, Jiang Hua was stunned and lost in thought. He heard that there were many treasures in this era's waste recycling station. Although he didn't know about antiques, when he made a move at this time, the price of wild vegetables was even lower than that of cabbage. 1 out of 10 items is really worth it, and it's all a guaranteed profit. That kid, is there any scrap to sell? Looking at an old man at the door and looking at Jiang Hua who had been standing at the door for a while, I didn't know what he was doing, so I asked. No, sir. My family is still short of some furniture and I don't have a ticket to buy a new one. I was wondering if I could exchange some with you, at least it should be cheaper. This child is quite good at managing a household. It's okay, come in and have a look. If you have any preferences, you can sell them to you at a cheaper price, which is more cost-effective than buying a new one. He took Jiang Hua into the waste recycling station and went directly to meet the leader. At this time, the leaders of the Revolutionary Committee were the ones who had the final say. Few of these people were for the good of the country. They were all selfish people. I want to buy old things. No problem, go pick them up. Once they are ready, go to the accountant to settle the bill. The leader of the Revolutionary Committee was unexpectedly articulate, and an employee led Jiang Hua to the warehouse. This place is full of old furniture, and there are pots, bowls, ladles, and pots next to it. You can choose for yourself. Once you have selected them, just call me and we'll settle the accounts together. After speaking, the goods actually left. Isn't this putting the mice in the rice jar? This employee saw that Jiang Hua was wearing thin clothes and couldn't hide anything, so he confidently let Jiang Hua choose alone. Who would have thought that Jiang Hua still had some personal space? Jiang Hua walked into the warehouse. Wow, these guys don't work. The warehouse is so chaotic, things are scattered everywhere. Don't rush to look at the furniture for now. The basket over there seems to contain something like calligraphy and painting scrolls. Let's take a look outside first. That guy is sitting against the wall, holding half a pack of cigarettes he stuffed in and basking in the sun. Jiang Hua opened a scroll and saw a painting with cabbage and grasshoppers. Take a look at the signature, Baisher Shanwang. Jiang Hua really knows the alias of Qi Baisher. Then he opened another scroll and saw the signature, Daqian Jusher. This is Zhang Daqian, and you can tell at a glance. Several paintings were opened consecutively, some of which were by Qi Baisher and Zhang Daqian, while the others were not well known or looked as beautiful as Qi Baisher and Zhang Daqian's paintings. Therefore, the two of them were put away. Jiang Hua had limited time and didn't have time to take a closer look, so he took out a small portion of each box. It was not greed, we were saving cultural relics. Skipping the scroll, there were also bronze artifacts next to it. Jiang Hua was completely clueless about this, and could only see a few more quaint and atmospheric ones put away. There are also some porcelain pieces that are piled up in the corner like garbage. No, what's left here is garbage. So Jiang Hua rudely collected a small part of them and picked up beautiful ones, including a few with purple iron feet and gold wire. They couldn't really be from the 5 famous kills of the Southern Song dynasty. If they were, they would make a lot of money. After finishing his bad deed, Jiang Hua pretended to choose old furniture. When he bought wood before, he also learned some knowledge about rosewood. He picked out a set of 8 immortals tables made of rosewood material, as well as a Taisher chair, a set of coat cabinets, and a set of walking beds. Hey buddy, you've picked it out, come in and settle the accounts. That guy opened his eyes and looked at Jiang Hua for a moment, then muttered, wait, we'll come. I waited until the smoke in my hand was burned out before standing up and patting my butt, following Jiang Hua into the warehouse. Looking at what Jiang Hua had selected, he estimated and gave a number, give it 102. Jiang Hua pretended to feel sorry and said, it's so expensive, these are all waste products. Is it a waste? Do you have any doubts about it? With such a large bed, the old goods are worth a lot of money. I'll give you this price, it's enough. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Good Trading. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Good Trading. First, go to the accountant to issue the invoice. When Jiang Hua received it and saw the amount written on it, it was 60 yuan. The guy who was looking at Jiang Hua raised his eyebrows. Jiang Hua immediately understood and handed over 120 yuan to the accountant in pain. After finding several board masters on the street and using tricycles to transport the goods to the courtyard where the wood was collected before, Jiang Hua returned to the recycling station. These guys have unclean hands and feet, and they are greedy for money, so that's all there is to talk about. Jiang Hua stood at the entrance of the recycling station and soon saw the guy who had just walked out of the recycling station. Hey buddy, let's take a moment to chat. The guy frowned unconsciously when he saw Jiang Hua turn around, but saw the front door handed over by Jiang Hua, so he followed him to the corner. What's going on? Are you addicted to buying? Jiang Hua pushed a box of front doors over and asked with a smile, are you still willing to give you money and flowers? What does that mean? Let me explain it clearly. Are those porcelain, calligraphy, painting, and bronze ware for sale? The guy squinted his eyes and looked at Jiang Hua, saying, porcelain and calligraphy can be sold, and a few pieces of bronze can be selected. They are heavy metals with tasks on them. Give me a price. The guy looked at Jiang Hua again and said angrily, "How much money can you have, half a big kid? You don't have to worry about it. If you provide a quote, I'll give it to you. If you don't, we'll just make friends. You're not at a disadvantage, at least you'll still end up with a box of front doors. Kid, you're quite skilled. I'll give you porcelain, calligraphy and painting, and I'll allow you to choose 5 pieces of bronze ware. You'll have to settle for 205. Jiang Hua thought for a moment and realized that he was just pretending to be earning blood, but without considering it, it was a bit unreasonable. The price is quite reasonable, but it's not good to say 240.5. The guy nodded and agreed without any hesitation, "Okay, 245, but how are you moving? Do you dare to boldly move this thing onto the street? Come and move at night. There's a place nearby for storage, and I'll get a tricycle. It won't be a problem to go back and forth in half an hour." The kid at the recycling bin nodded and said, "Okay, as long as you have a solution, we won't issue the ticket to you. We'll have to figure out a way to settle the accounts ourselves. We'll have to pay and deliver the goods tonight. Let's just keep it this way. At 10 o'clock in the evening, I'll bump into the door. On the way back, I was thinking about where to find a tricycle. At this time, tricycles are large items that most people don't have, so I need to borrow them from Mr. Boehner. Okay, find Li Kueyong. His father is Mr. Boehner. Although he passed away, there are uncles and uncles who still work in this field. Spending money to rent for a night, with Kueyong's presence, it shouldn't be a problem." Jiang Hua knew Li Kueyong, which was also a credit to Zhong Yuemin. The disciples of the courtyard and the children of the alley were naturally incompatible, but Zhong Yuemin and Kueyong had a genuine friendship, and their relationship was also good. Thinking of this, Jiang Hua walked into the supply and marketing cooperative and bought 1 pound of rice cake and 1 pound of rice noodles. He came to the door for help and couldn't do it empty-handed. Familiar people found Li Kueyong's house and knocked on the door. "Who is it?" Hearing his voice, he knew it was Li Kueyong's his mother, so he replied, "Aunt Zhang, I'm Kueyong's brother, and my name is Jiang Hua." "Jiang Hua, why did you come over?" "This is Li Kueyong's voice." A rustling sound came from inside the room, and Li Kueyong opened the door. "Kueyong is also at home, so I happen to have something to do with you." Jiang Hua handed the dim sum to Kueyong, who was immediately dissatisfied. "No, buddy, what do you mean? You still have to buy things when you come to our house, don't treat me like a buddy. It's not for you, it's for my younger brothers and sisters to satisfy their cravings. Keep it." Kueyong had several younger brothers and sisters. The younger two were looking at the dim sum and drooling. Kueyong took it down, opened it first, and handed some cakes to his younger brothers and sisters. "Let's eat, thank you first, brother Jiang Hua." "Thank you, brother Jiang Hua." Kueyong's mother poured a glass of water from an enamel jar and placed it next to Jiang Hua's hand. Kueyong said to his mother, "Mom, what should I do? I'll treat my buddy myself." Aunt Zhang glared at her son and said discontentedly, "What kind of words does this child say? Hua Zi is not an outsider." Yes, you can go in and watch over your younger siblings. Hua Zi and I have something to discuss." Kueyong's mother is a traditional woman who values following her father before marriage, following her husband after marriage, and following her son after her husband's death. Now that her eldest son is the backbone of the family, since he has said so, she will follow suit. "Hua Zi, please sit down. I'll have my meal in a while. I'll be eating here today. Auntie, stop being busy. I have something to do with finding Kueyong. Maybe I'll have to go out later." Kueyong asked, "Hey buddy, what's going on? I've ordered some food in front of me and I still need to go out. Isn't your dad riding 3 wheels? Yeah, didn't my dad die early? Why bother mentioning him? Do you have an uncle who still does this? Borrow 3 rounds for 1 night and pay it back early tomorrow morning. Kuei-yong enthusiastically asked, why do you need to move things? Brother, give you a hand. It only takes 3 rounds, no need for your help. Kuei-yong said unsatisfied, I'm an outsider. As a buddy, I'm an outsider. If you want to do something banned, don't interfere. The fewer people know, the better. Besides, sellers also want to see more people appear, adding a bit of danger. Kuei-yong nodded repeatedly and said, okay, I understand. Don't ask any more. You should pay more attention to it yourself. Can we borrow 3 rounds? Isn't this nonsense? It's just a matter of 1 sentence, come with me. Kuei-yong put on his clothes, hat, and said to his mother, Mom, I'll go out with Hua Zi. You guys eat first, don't wait for me. After wandering around the alley with Kuei-yong for a while, I arrived at a large courtyard. Kuei-yong looked at a middle-aged man and shouted, Uncle Bai, I'll lend you 3 rounds for 1 night. I'll pay you back tomorrow morning. The middle-aged man politely asked, Kuei-yong, we need to move things at home. Do we need an uncle to help us? No need, I'm bringing my buddies here, young and strong guys. The middle-aged man handed over the key and didn't forget to remind him, lock it when you leave. If you lose it, it will ruin my grandfather's job. You're fine, okay. The 2 of them pushed the car out of the alley, and Kuei-yong handed it over to Jiang Hua. Here you are, be careful not to ruin my grandfather's job. You too, okay. Kuei-yong turned around and was ready to leave. Jiang Hua grabbed him and said, what's up? It's time for dinner, I'll treat you to a meal. Pull it down, you have a few tickets on you. I'll go home and eat them. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Repaying with Peach Blossoms. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Repaying with Peach Blossoms. In the end, Kuei-yong didn't go back. The guests invited by Jiang Hua each had a bowl of zhajiangmian and a plate of pig ears. The food they ate was delicious. Jiang Hua rode his tricycle to a secluded place and collected it into the space. In the middle of the night, Jiang Hua rode his tricycle to the recycling station. His sharp vision made him see a person squatting in a corner. When he saw Jiang Hua riding his tricycle over, the person also walked out of the corner. The guy complained, this point just arrived, it froze me to death. Don't be afraid of hard work if you want to make money. That's the reason, ride in. The 2 of them pushed the car directly into the warehouse, and the guy turned on his flashlight, illuminating the things on the ground. Pay the money, it's all yours after you pay. We are afraid of both ends of the Hmagon game. I will pay half first, and then pay the other half after the game is over. Okay, you're a person who handles things, so careful and cautious. The person no longer raised the money and took half of the deposit to help Jiang Hua load things into the car. After the car was full, Jiang Hua was about to leave on his bike, and the kid said, do you want me to help you unload the goods? With so many things, it's enough for you to work hard. Don't bother, our friendship ends at the recycling station. I won't ask how you invoice, how I arrange, and you don't ask either. Once we leave the recycling station, we don't know anyone. The guy laughed and said, well, since you're so sensible, we have some business to do. You can come and take a look when you're free in the future. I'll keep some good things for you. Jiang Hua rode his tricycle out, took 2 turns, put his things into the space, and then found a corner to get the cat up. When time was up, he rode back. After 7 or 8 trips, finally all the things were moved, and Jiang Hua paid the remaining money in full. The guy counted some tickets and said hello, running away happily. I squinted at home for a while, and it was dawn. I bought 2 jean of meat buns and deep-fried dough sticks for breakfast on the way, and then went to Bai's house to return the car. Uncle Bai, I have locked the door of your car for you. Kuei-yong is unable to come due to some business, so let me go. Thank you for your car, but it has been a great help. Jiang Hua warmly thanked and handed over breakfast, saying, "I bought some breakfast on the way, don't mind." "This child, you're so polite. You're going to use the car, right? Let Kue Yong come forward. Now that we know each other, we can use the car in the future and come straight home." "Alright, if you're not as wise as me, then we already know each other." After saying hello, Jiang Hua turned around and left. The white old man was very happy. He borrowed his tricycle at night and had breakfast, which cost him a lot of money. With a bite of big meat buns, his mouth was full of oil, and the family had not had any meat or fish for a month or two, which happened to satisfy the children's craving. When he returned home, he locked the door and looked through the items one by one. In fact, he couldn't recognize any good or bad things. This was not acceptable, he was confused about collecting them. After watching for a while, my stomach was also a bit hungry. I was about to take out a wild chicken stew and think about whether I should thank Han Jin, who helped me make crossbows with money. So, carrying 2 wild chickens and a rabbit, they walked towards the steel rolling mill. "Uncle Han, you're idle now." Han Jin put down the newspaper and saw Jiang Hua happily say, "Here we go again. What do you want Uncle Han to do for you today?" "I won't do anything, I'll bring you the meat." Jiang Hua took out his hands from behind, 2 wild chickens and rabbits, tied with ropes, just sliding around. They weighed several pounds of meat, and whoever looked at them was greedy. "Oh, you did it. It's quite impressive. It happened to be sent to the cafeteria for silly pillars to stew. The 2 of us will have meat for lunch today." Han Jin couldn't help but drag Jiang Hua towards the kitchen, and as soon as he entered the cafeteria, he shouted loudly, "Silly pillar, silly pillar. Who, shout enemy, dot." The fool wiped his hands on his apron while lifting the curtain from the kitchen. "Isn't this Chief Han? We need to start a small stove again." Han Jin threw 2 wild chickens and a rabbit over and said, "Let's arrange for 2 or 3. Silly Zhu pondered and said with a smile, "It's fat enough, the wild chicken is strong enough, it won't stew until it's time, and the rabbit will be there soon. Then arrange a rabbit and help me tidy up the wild chicken, and I will bring it home to stew at night." Silly Zhu readily agreed, "No problem, just sit there and wait to eat. It's not a problem for the wild chicken to help you clean up, but if you want to take it home, it's probably enough." Han Kachang smiled and said, "Do you dare to cheat on me, kid?" Silly Zhu said with a frightened expression, "What am I doing with the pheasant?" "I dare to take your pheasant. You have to arrange for someone to check my personal belongings every day." Silly Zhu pointed to the pheasant and said, "There is a reception tonight. Chief Zhou, who is in charge of procurement, is almost on fire for the ingredients in his room. So far, he hasn't received any good items. You said you brought the pheasant to the cafeteria, isn't that a trap for yourself?" Han Jin crossed his waist and cursed with a smile, "If it's time to get into the room, then I'll get into the room. I'll lend him Zhou Laoqua 2 courage, and he won't dare to take my things. This is my nephew's filial piety to me." Silly Zhu smiled and said, "You can't tell me that. That's all I'll say. Later, when the fragrance floats in my place, Chief Zhou is sure to come over and smell it. Hurry up and cook. I haven't been exposed to meat and fish for a while. Zhou Laoku has come and asked him to tell me that I won't kill him." Silly Zhu carried his things back to the kitchen, and after a while, he heard a piercing sound of oil exploding, and the fragrance drifted up. "Silly pillar, I finally managed to make some pork for tonight's reception. You've made it for me now. What will you make for the leader to eat tonight?" As expected, just like what Silly Zhu said, Chief Zhou came upon smelling the smell and started cursing before even entering the kitchen. Silly Zhu quickly explained, "Rabbit meat, it's not pork you made. Where did the rabbit come from?" Silly Zhu pointed to the private room and said, "Chief Han's nephew is filial, and there are also 2 wild chickens left." Director Zhou patted his thigh and said, "I didn't copy it. I need to quickly discuss with old Han." Let's just forget about the rabbit and keep the 2 wild chickens for tonight's entertainment. Chief Zhou hurriedly entered the private room and shouted, "Old Han, you need to help your brother with this, otherwise I won't be able to pass tonight." A door curtain, a middle-aged man came in from outside, and Jiang Hua looked at him, and he also looked at Jiang Hua. "Someone else is here, old Han." "Who is this?" Han Jin smiled and said, "My nephew, what are you shouting about? What can I do for you?" "The logistics warehouse has been stolen, no problem. I will notify the security department to investigate and have someone strictly investigate the situation outside. You can destroy me. If the logistics warehouse is stolen, the first person to hold me accountable is me. I want those 2 wild chickens. It's really difficult to deal with good things on the market now. I only got a few pounds of good pork tenderloin in a hurry. Compared to your wild chicken, it's like throwing away goods." End of this chapter.